Hi, everybody. I am Jennifer, a grateful recovered alcoholic. The book tells me to introduce myself as someone who has recovered. And I'm just going to say I've been learning to discern the things I hear that come out of that book and the things I hear, sometimes some really good stuff at meetings, but not necessarily the message. And I've had an opportunity to learn more about that and to share some of that with our speaker tonight. And I have a feeling you're going to hear a lot of good stuff and the message of Alcoholics Anonymous from Travis.
Some of this out of your way here.
Whoa! I'm Travis and I am an alcoholic. I want to preface tonight with this is my story, this is my experience. If you don't like it, that's your problem, not mine. So, there's some stuff that some of you are going to look at and be like, well, how the hell is that even possible? Because that's not the AA I know. But it is. So, I grew up in a small town, southern Wisconsin, fairly normal parents, fairly normal life, nothing really out of the ordinary. I didn't grow up with alcoholic parents. I did have a mom who's got some addiction issues with hoarding, but I didn't realize that was addiction until later in life and how it scarred me. But it's not the cause of my alcoholism. That's for damn sure, and I've learned that now. The other thing I'm going to do is apologize for swearing. I know what's going to happen tonight. I am doing my best to not swear from a podium. It will happen, so I'm going to apologize right now. I'm working on it. God's working on me. I'm working on it. So I didn't realize that this so-called normal life was going to lead into something that I am here doing today, but here I am. I, again, had that normal Wisconsin life. I partied, I drank in high school, la-di-da. We've all been there. I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. I went to my first treatment center at 20 years old and lied my way to get into it, as any good alcoholic would do. I didn't realize I was an alcoholic. I was doing smoking a lot of pot at that time, and if any of you have seen the movie How High with Dave Chappelle, there's a line in there where he says, I just want to quit smoking pot, and they make fun of him and all that. So I didn't want to go into a treatment center saying that I don't know how to quit smoking pot, right? So I made up a line that I was a pill addict because I figured they'd let me in then. And lied my way through treatment, got out, they took me to a couple AA meetings, and that's when I was introduced to it. I never knew anything else. When I got into AA, they took me to a couple of the local meetings near the treatment center, and I'm sure there were things in there that I heard that just didn't register. I heard the 90 meetings in 90 days. I heard the read the first 164. I heard all that, all the cliches, all the slogans, right? And I left it at that because that's what I was told. That's what these old timers in the meeting were telling me is read the 164. 90 meetings in 90 days, don't date in a year, don't do this, don't do that. And that's all great. But it didn't keep me sober, not even close. I was going to meetings. Like I say, I went to my first treatment center at 20, and on my 21st birthday, I went to an AA meeting, and I left that meeting, and I went to a tavern. So that 90 meetings in 90 days wasn't keeping me sober. I was still empty man, an empty shell of a human being. I then spent the next 9 years miserable, depressed, suicidal, in and out of AA. I'd come in, I'd hear the 90 meetings in 90 days, I'd hear, read the 164, just, you weren't ready that time, were you? You hadn't hit your bottom yet. My opinion has changed slightly on that. I think those are all really great things, and I've learned a few things since I've truly gotten into my recovery. I came to Sparta just a little over 3 years ago after a suicide attempt. It didn't come to fruition the way I envisioned it. Me and my wife had just gotten into a really big argument, and I was ready to die. I had it all planned out. I was ready to kill myself. I had the plan of attack, and it was going to happen. And after reflecting on the event, I know I heard it now. And I heard, try AA one more time. And I pulled my phone out of my pocket, and I searched AA meeting near me. I didn't have the Chair app. I didn't have any of that shit at that time. But I pulled that up, and happenstance to be, I'm 7 minutes from Ontario, and the meeting starts in 5 minutes. And let me tell you, I pulled into that meeting on time. Because I was terrified. I just had a plan to kill myself, and I heard a voice said, try AA one more time. And I walked into that meeting, I sat down in that chair, and there was a few people in there. One of them is now passed, another one sitting at the end of this room down here tonight. For sure that were in that meeting. They showed me some love, compassion. They told me the same things that I'd been hearing for years, but it was just enough to keep me sober for that day. I then spent the next 3 months going to meetings, doing everything I needed to do. So I thought. But I was still hollow. I was still depressed. I was still in control of my life. I was still trying to play puppeteer. I was still trying to be the grand master of the play. And the people just wouldn't stay put. How dare they? And I happened to be sitting in that chair right there. And the person that saved my life, and I 100% believe that tonight, the person that saved my life happened to be sitting right where you're sitting. And they heard my pity party. They heard my, I know what I need to do. I've got this. I've got it all figured out. I've got to do X, Y, and Z. And the person had enough love and compassion for me to say, you don't know shit. You are on a path that you've taken so many times. We know you've been in and out of these rooms. We know you've done this. You might not like me. You might not even care to hear what I have to say. But if you give a shit about your life, you will come talk to me after the meeting, or you will walk out that door and I'll probably never see you again because you'll be dead. I sat in that meeting for the next 40 minutes and stewed on that, pissed. How dare this person? They don't know me. I grew the pair of balls and I went over and talked to her. It was a woman that was willing to call out my bullshit. I went over and talked to her, and the first thing she did, she had her big book in her hand, and she opened that sucker up. That's the first time in close to 10 years in and out of a program that somebody has opened their big book and shoved it in my face and said, let's go through it together. Are you actually an alcoholic, or are you just one of them that has a drinking problem? Let's qualify you. Let's do what this book tells us. Whoa. I got honest with this person. I told him I'd never worked the steps properly. I've never even read the first 164. But I had the slogans. I could come in and slogan the shit out of a meeting. I sounded probably pretty decent to a newcomer. But I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't have a clue because I'd never worked the program. I talked with this woman for about half an hour, 40 minutes after that meeting, and I walked out going, holy crap. I've been missing it this whole time. It's right here. Right here. always wanted the solution. I always wanted the magic wand. It's been in my hands the whole time. That pill that we all want. We want to go to the doctor, get the pill. We're not alcoholic anymore. We want that hole filled with something. It's right here. I've come to learn that that hole that needed to be filled was my spiritual malady. My lack of God. My lack of a higher power. And a lot of people get scared when we start talking about higher power in God, because that's religion. That's what most of us, a lot of us grew up with, was religion. And religion, for a lot of us, didn't treat us well. God didn't care about us. God doesn't love us. God doesn't give two rats about me. And now you're going to start talking about God? I just walked in here. God don't want me. If he wanted me, he wouldn't give me this disease. God wants us. God wants us. So I met with her. I talked for a while. I was so moved and ready to get into action that next night we met at another meeting, and after the meeting we went 1, 2, 3, just like that. There was no waiting. There was no, you've only been in the program 6 weeks. I don't think you're ready yet. No. The requirement is a desire to stop drinking. Do you want to stop drinking? Right? That's why we're here. Then let's start working the steps. Nowhere in the big book, and I've scoured, I've listened, I've searched. Nowhere in the big book does it say we have to be sober a year, 6 months, jumped through hoops, done this, done that. So we started working the steps immediately. I did 1 through 3 with her that night, and I went home that night, and I sat down with my pen and paper, and I started working that 4th step immediately. It took me 3-4 days. It was kind of bullshit. It was a little tough, right? I'm green. I've never done one before. I had some good directions. And I did it. I didn't burst into flames. I didn't have a heart attack. What was I so scared of? It's my story. I did these things. All I'm doing is taking it out of here and putting it on a piece of paper. Why did I have this fear of this? I'm not worried about the 5th step yet. I'm not there. We'll worry about that fear when we get there, right? Just write it down. Boom. I get it done. Was feeling a little uneasy about the male-female thing. I realize now that don't freaking matter. All you need is another person that's alcoholic that wants to hear your story. A priest, a minister, a Baptist, a doctor, a lawyer, psychiatrist, a rabbi. It doesn't matter who you share that 5th step with. That's in the big book. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I decide who I'm going to share my 5th step with, and I get it's rough. I get it's probably not as thorough as it should have been. I get in contact with this man, ask him if he's willing to do a 5th step with me. He says, of course. When do you want to do it? I said, when you're available. How about tonight? Let's go. Giddy up. So we meet right down here in this basement. I think we were at these 2 chairs. I was sitting where he was right there. Me, him, and God. Like I say, it was rough. Was it as thorough as it should have been? No. But I took the leap of faith that God would get me through it. And I did it. So, I keep sober. I get into service. I do a couple of amends. And I start to coast because I've had this spiritual experience. I felt great. I left that meeting that night, And I've shared this with a couple of people. I left that meeting that night. I stayed for the meeting. I'm going home. It's kind of snowing a little bit. The roads are slick. I'm driving slow. And I say this with a little bit of caution because some of you might think I'm crazy, but it's like I start speaking in tongues as I'm driving. I don't know what I'm even saying. But God's in the passenger seat. I'm talking, I'm sharing, I'm asking him to remove this stuff. No idea what's going on. I've never done this before, but it's just coming out of me, out loud, not in my head, out loud. And I'm the only person in the car, no radio on, snow and roads are slick. No idea, right? I do some of my amends. I get my stuff going. I'm of service. I'm chairing a meeting. I'm helping a revival of the camp out down in Ontario. Some of you guys know that's going on again. But what do? What's the old alcoholic Travis do? I start resting on my laurels, right? I had my spiritual experience. I'm done. Yeah, I'm done. I did it. I've got it. I feel good. Life's good. Marriage is starting to get good. Kids are happy. House is happiest it's been in a real long time, right? I'm getting to meetings. I'm doing the things. Whew, I got it. Thank God I did not relapse. Thank God I did not kill myself, because all of a sudden I start feeling this fog back into my life. What did I quit doing? I quit talking to God. I quit when a newcomer walked in. I quit jumping out of my seat and going over and shaking their hand. I quit doing the things that the big book told me to do. I didn't know that, but I had quit. So all of a sudden, that spiritual experience that I felt, I was up here, I'm just slowly, over 2 years. This is fairly recent, but I jumped into, I'll give a little backstory on this. I'm feeling pretty shitty. I'm depressed. I'm inside myself again. I'm starting to try and pull the pieces around again. Rearrange the show. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I'm starting. And I happened to be taking my daughter home, and the playlist is hitting just right. The songs are kind of, pulling on the heartstrings. I'm this, that. I'm going down this rabbit hole of darkness, and then I think of this other song that always used to make me feel really shitty that I liked listening to when I was depressed. So I YouTubed that one right away and put that on the playlist, and I get home from doing this, and I look at my wife and I say, I'm going to a meeting, and I jump right back in the truck and I go to a meeting. Now, I'm feeling like absolute shit. Depressed, on the verge of breaking. And I walk into this meeting, and this old timer that knows me from down here happens to be at it. I see him, I wave. How are you doing? He comes over. How are you doing? I say, I'm doing well. Doing good. What the fuck? I feel like shit. And the first time somebody comes over and asks me, how you doing? I lie to them. I'm back to my old alcoholic tendencies, right? Lying, dishonest, not doing the stuff that I should be. The meeting starts, and the first thing I do, who wants to stare? And I looked at that old timer and I said, I need to be honest right now. I said, you come down, you asked me how I was doing, and I lied to you. Right in the meeting. I lied to you. You asked me how I was doing, and the first thing out of my mouth was my spewing BS. I said, I'm not doing well. I feel like crap. My life is slowly falling apart. I'm stressed. I'm anxious. I'm horrible. I left that meeting, and I happened to call that woman that, without a suspicion of doubt in my mind, saved my life the first time. And I call her and I say, hey. And she's like, are you okay? You know, we don't talk regularly, you know, and all of a sudden I'm calling her at, 8:30 at night. And, are you okay? I said, no. I said, I need to get back in this. I said, I feel like shit. I'm not working my program. I need to revisit the steps. I was not honest and thorough. I need to do this. Perfect. Giddy up. Let's do this. It has sent me down a rabbit hole of spiritual experience that I've thought I experienced the first time, thought I had the first time. I spoke with her for a while and went to a meeting. We were communicating, and I said, I'm going to work with somebody who's a little bit close to me that I've had some, past with, and that's okay. We're good. And so what do? I'm depressed. I feel like shit. And she happens to share something with me on YouTube, an AA speaker. And I'm like, well, I've never done this before, but let's listen to it. I work in service, so I've got a work van. I drive from farm to farm. I do service for an hour or two, and then I'm back driving another hour the other direction back to the shop or whatever. So I'm listening to the radio anyway. That's just spewing garbage at me. Why not plug in an AA speaker? So I plug in this AA speaker, and holy crap, you want to talk about somebody who was speaking through the truck at me that lit me on fire. He spoke of love, compassion, care, and this thing right here. This thing. I can honestly say that I've done more big book research in the last month than I have in the whole entirety of my life. This speaker, he was speaking and he goes, on page 20, we're going to read this right now. And I'm driving, so I don't have my big book with me. But what do? I grab my pen out of my pocket and I write page 20 on my hand. And it stays with me for the day. And I get home and I go, let's see what he was talking about. Page 20. Let's open this up, and I start reading it, right? And then I go, oh, yeah. Now what he was talking about makes sense because I open it up. I read what he was reading to me. I reveal it to my life. It's beautiful, right? And I'm like, that felt really good, reading this, applying it to myself. So I start searching them out myself. I'm not getting any, links. So I start searching them out myself, and I rabbit hole down the big book. There's worse things I've rabbit holed down, so this can't be so bad, So I start rabbit holing down this big book. And the first thing I want to share with you that I've learned, and I knew this before I got in the big book, but when you see italicized writing, that usually means it's important, right? So this was one of the things he had spoke on one of these speaker meetings. He's a big circuit speaker, right? So there's hundreds of these things on YouTube from this guy. So you can just go days and days with listening to him, and there's a million more. But anyway, so this one here on page 24, there is a solution. The fact that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice to drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of suffering, humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. Just reading that, what's that mean? I'm a newcomer, right? What the fuck's that mean? I don't know what that means. Well, I've learned that usually after the italicized parts, there's directions or explanations. So, yeah, right? It's stupid. It's so easy. Find an italicized part. I dare you tonight to go home, open your big book, open it to any page, find an italicized part. Read it and go, that doesn't make any sense to me. Read the next paragraph. They'll explain it. I didn't know that. I'm learning. All right. So, what's that mean to me? I don't know. It means that without doing the work, if I'm out there just floundering in life, on the best sunshiny day, right? All of a sudden, a butterfly's going to fly in front of my truck. I'm going to hit it, and I'm going to go, son of a bitch, that thing, I killed it. I'm going to go have a beer. I don't remember the fight I had with my wife a week ago. I don't remember yelling and screaming at the bar when the cops came to drag me out. I can't pull that into my mind to keep me sober. I am powerless against the first drink. I didn't know that. I thought I had the power to be able to think back to that last drink to be able to keep me sober. Nope. I'm learning. Blew my mind. Blew my mind. Plenty of time. Perfect. Bathroom breaks yet? Anybody? Questions? Arguments? We'll take them up after the meeting. I don't argue though, because what I'm sharing is straight out of the literature. If you want to argue with it, open your big book. We'll dispute it. We'll dispute it, and I'll show you the big book, and I'll say, read it. I don't argue. I'm reading it out of the big book, guys. So the next thing I wanted to share, and unfortunately, I'm going to share this quick story. I hope it don't derail me too bad. So tonight, me and my wife, we were going to Toma, right? And I had this vision in my head that we were going to Toma, coming home. I was going to change. I was not going to wear a sweatshirt tonight to speak. I wasn't even going to wear a hat. I was actually going to comb my hair, maybe. Wow. Yeah, I know. Wow. And I was going to grab my big book because it's highlighted, it's underlined. I had the pages dog-eared, the stuff I wanted to hit on tonight. Well, we get to Toma, or we're headed to Toma, and she goes, you know, it makes a lot of sense to just jump on the interstate and go over to Sparta and just be there. Yeah, I think it's fine, right? Yeah. Halfway to Sparta, I go, son of a bitch, I don't have my big book. And I'm not wearing a button-up, but we're on it. We'll figure it out. So I got here tonight. I grabbed a big book, looked through it. I knew there was 4 parts that I really wanted to hit tonight. I actually wanted to hit more, but I don't have mine to do that. But so bear with me a little bit. I found the parts, but I just need to go back through them because I had a few notes there with the parts. So page 24. We are now on to page. Oh man, I think I messed her up bad now. Hold on. All right, so 80. I feel like I messed up a bookmark here. Anyway, we'll skip to the next one. Gosh, I really feel it. Oh, I did find it. I wasn't that far off. All right, in the section, chapter, into action. What do you think that means? Anybody? Yell it out. Into action. Applying it. Doing the work, right? Perfect. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. So I don't just have to do it once. I don't just have to do it twice. Not just on Thursdays. Not just on Sunday mornings when I go to church. I have to live it. Woo. Every day. One day at a time, right? Another one of those cliches. But it's true, but a little cliche. Next part I want to hit on because this was pretty important to me. I did not realize it until later on because I touched on that God thing earlier, right? We usually have this preconceived notion God means religion. God means the Catholic Church. God means the Baptist Church. God means whatever, right? We have this preconceived notion. So we come into we come into a meeting and we hear, our 12 steps, came to believe in the power greater than ourselves, turned our lives and our will over to the power of God. Turning my ears off, this ain't for me, right? So if we have a newcomer come in, this tells me what I should do with the newcomer. It's in the chapter Working with Others, page 93. Again, italicized. Okay. I'm going to hit on it and then we'll talk about it. Tell them exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. But that turns people off, right? No. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it empathetic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he live by spiritual principles. Nobody ever explained that to me in a meeting. Nobody. I heard that on one of my AA speeches that I was on YouTube. What's that mean, though? To a newcomer who comes in who doesn't understand a damn thing that we're talking. What does it mean? It means that we don't have to argue about what higher power means. I have to look at him and say, can you believe that there is one insignificant thing bigger than you? And if he or she says yes, we move on. That newcomer does not need to paint the picture of his higher power and place it on the wall above the mantle of his fireplace. Just has to believe that there is something bigger than themselves. That's it. Boom. Let's move on. Why sit and stew on this and contemplate it? And well, Susie G over here is Lutheran, and this person's Catholic, and this person, and I don't believe in God. Is there something bigger than you? Yeah. Let's go. Giddy up. Move on. More will be revealed. Okay, that was one of the last sections I wanted to hit. The last thing I really wanted to hit on tonight, and again, this is my experience in AA. Some of you will look at me when I start sharing this that it is bullshit, that's not what happens, that's not the case, you're going to the wrong meetings, you're going to whatever. I went to AA for 9 years. And I heard the cliches over and over. 90 meetings, 90 days. Can't sponsor unless you're a year sober. Can't do this, can't do that. The keep coming back, it works if you work it. Nobody in an AA meeting pulled me to the side after the meeting and said, hey, do you know what any of this meant tonight? Do you understand anything we talked about tonight? Nobody. Why? Why? We say the newcomer's the most important person in the room, correct? Then let's treat them like that. It should be gangbusters to them when they walk in, whether it be shaking their hand, hugging them, getting them to the coffee bar. I'm guilty of it. I'm very guilty of it. I used to see a newcomer come in with that little piece of paper, and I go, I don't want to deal with them because they aren't here for the right reasons. Who gives a shit? Let's talk to them. Let's put a big book in front of them. Let's open it up and let's talk about it. That's my experience. Until somebody was willing to do that to me. And it saved my life. Had that person not been willing to say, you're hurting. We've seen it. People are hurting, controlling their lives. Right out the door they go and we never see them again. Or they come back in 6 months and we say, oh, you just weren't ready. Well, why were they here in the first place? They were miserable. They're still miserable. They were suicidal. They're still suicidal. I need to do a better job. I need to be the person the newcomer goes, holy shit, that person's got some God in them. I don't need to shove this thing down their throat, but we need to open it up. I'm going to ask a question, and this is going to be very controversial. When was the last time you brought your big book to a meeting? There we go. One person.
Last week, I never took it out.
You've got yours. 2 people.
Mine's in the truck if I need it.
Yours is in the truck.
I just used the one in the room.
So what happens when that newcomer comes in and says, "Where's it at?" This old timer doesn't carry their big book around. This old comer just comes in, plops down, drinks their coffee, right? That's what I need to do. I shared this a while back. There was a gentleman that came in, I was about a year sober. He come in, and that man brought a satchel. Big old man purse. He had his big book. He had his 12 by 12. He had his daily reflections. He had his 24-hour-a-day book. He had a notebook, and he had a pen. And that man had a spiritual experience that I envied. I hated him for it. How? He's been in here a month. How is he doing what he's doing? He can't be that far along yet. Bullshit. The book tells us we don't have to wait a year, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, until the stars align and this problem's fixed and this is done, and then I can do this step. No. The big book tells us we do it immediately. I was awful. I'm going to attempt to do a better job to the newcomer. I'm not going to shove it down their throat, but I'm going to share it with them. I'm going to open that big book. I'm going to share a little of my experience. I'm going to put it in front of them. Like I say, some of you might not agree with what I'm saying, but it's in the big book. I come tonight to share my experience, hopefully give a little bit of hope to a newcomer or somebody with less sobriety than myself, because I came in broken, depressed, suicidal. God has filled every one of those cracks with mortar, mixed perfectly to a T that an earthquake won't break it down. As long as. I go back to this phrase, that we have to live it. I'll pass.
Oh.